Now, for more on that story, we're joined by our in-house crime expert, Mr. Yusuf Abramjee. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Just to speak about the significance, because, I mean, this looks like a major bust of an internal syndicate.
Indeed, and I think Barry is absolutely correct. The Hawks need to be complimented for this breakthrough. It is a significant breakthrough, and I'm told also that more arrests could be expected over the next few days. Now, we know that thousands of rounds of ammunition have gone missing from the JMPD, leading the police and the JMPD to this particular breakthrough. Now, you might argue it's nothing new. We often hear of weapons disappearing from the South African Police Service, from police stations, from storage depots, from Metro Police. But I think the mere fact that this ammunition and the weapons very often end up in wrong hands is something that we need to be concerned about. Now, we know before also there have been allegations that criminals are buying these weapons and ammunition sometimes from corrupt law enforcement officials, from corrupt Metro cops. So I think the investigation will be interesting to see how it unfolds, to see what was the motive behind it and what exactly was this ammunition being used for. And when we talk of criminal cops being involved in wrongdoing, just overnight we heard that there was a robbery at a post office in Makassar outside Cape Town, and two of the suspects were arrested, are flying squad cops. So cops getting involved in crime is a major source of concern.
Now, you mentioned that we could expect more arrests in this particular matter. Just how widespread is this issue?
Well, I think it is widespread. We know that in this particular case, there has been a breakthrough, but very often when suspects are arrested and when ammunition is seized and the weapons are seized with the serial numbers filed off, it all often leads back to either the police or either to a security company or to Metro Police. So the control of these important ammunition and weapons is something that we need to look at. And I think the JMPD has got a lot of work to do to make sure that this ammunition and the weapons are safely secured. But I think, generally speaking, it is widespread. Very often, we know that these ammunition and sometimes the guns end up in the wrong hands, and that is claiming the lives of innocent people when these criminals or the robbers execute their crimes.
Mr. Abramjee, are you able to maybe crunch some numbers for us? Just how much is this business worth?
Well, we know that the crime business runs into millions and millions of rands. It's difficult to put an exact amount to it. We know that very often arrests are made. We know that the criminal justice system works very, very slowly. It takes years for people to be convicted. And we know sometimes these officials who are arrested are then suspended. Sometimes they go back to work on full pay pending disciplinary action. But when we are talking here of a massive industry, we know that, for example, AK-47s, R4 rifles, R5 rifles often end up in the hand of these criminals. Even in some of the CIT robberies that we've seen, where R4 and R5 rifles were used, the origin sometimes takes us back to the South African Police Service, to the South African National Defence Force, and that is a source of concern. And I think the mere fact that this particular breakthrough came as a result of a tip-off from a member of the public is significant, because someone, somewhere, somehow knows who's involved in wrongdoing, but we are talking of a massive industry. People want to make a quick buck.
Mr. Abramjee, can we just move to a story that's been making headlines for most of the week? That is Diepsloot, the response from law enforcement. We know that the socioeconomic conditions there are just untenable. The crime levels are untenable. What needs to happen? What response do we need to see moving forward, especially around law enforcement? Because we've seen a lot of criticism with how they're dealing with the raids as well as stop and search operations.
Well, I think if one looks at the whole situation in Diepsloot, and we are told that there is some tension as we still speak, but the relative calm has returned to the area, I think we need to look at the broader issues. What happened in Diepsloot is nothing new. Many areas throughout South Africa have had these incidents of crime where people have been killed, there have been murders, a number of murders, and the community responds. Diepsloot, the history goes back many, many years. Mob justice, or so-called street justice, have been carrying on for many years. I remember, even as a young reporter, going to Diepsloot and seeing how people are set on fire. And I'm talking of the early 90s, where people were set on fire because they committed or allegedly committed crimes. So the mere fact that the community responded again shows that people are fed up with the high levels of crime. Not only in Diepsloot, we're seeing it on the Cape Flats, we see it in many other parts of South Africa. I think the South African Police Service, particularly the Minister and the new National Commissioner and the Gauteng leadership, need to be complimented for moving swiftly into the Diepsloot area, for engaging the communities, and I think even politicians, the Premier of Gauteng, we had the Minister of Home Affairs, the Minister of Defence commenting. But I think the Diepsloot area, historically, even during the height of these xenophobic attacks in South Africa some years ago, has been a hotspot. We know there are many foreigners living in that particular area, and tensions between foreigners and South Africans often run high. We must just be careful, in my view, that this does not spill over into a mass xenophobic attack that could spread to other areas. And that is why it's important for police to continue to control and to maintain the visibility in the area. And police visibility is a problem in many parts of South Africa, especially crime hotspots. But I think we need to be also very careful, in my view, how foreigners are treated. We know that the President has commented to say it's wrong to ask foreigners for their ID documents and so on. But I think also the Home Affairs Department, together with the police, need to handle this with a lot of sensitivity. We know that there's a lot of anti-foreign sentiment, but some of these people may be illegally in South Africa. You simply cannot go and attack somebody because he or she doesn't speak one of the South African languages, and that could be extremely dangerous. So my fear is, if the situation in Diepsloot is not contained, it could spill over into xenophobic attacks, and we know that even people from Operation Dudula, who have been active in the area, are now saying they're taking their campaign to other parts of South Africa. So I think this matter needs to be settled, and we need calm to return before we see it spilling over very sadly into other areas.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Mr. Abramjee. That is just some analysis with regards to a Hawks operation that's led to a breakthrough in an ammunition syndicate, as well as some thoughts around what is taking place in Diepsloot.